And I must stress that all our services are free. We do not charge for anything at all. For once a student comes to our office and leaves our office, he or she is receiving free service from beginning to the end. We do not charge, I must repeat, for any destination we counsel students to. So I need to, emphasize that as well. So moving on to Canadian study webinar while we are here. I believe it's a popular destination that we all know about, basically. And it's something that we've all been accustomed to. North America, Canada, the US borders it. You can see the large scale section of the map here showing Canada, which has a land-wide landmass, and it borders the US, 10 provinces, 3 territories, and over 200 languages spoken. So why do students want to study in Canada? I mean, that's one of the reasons why we're all here, to learn or to know why it's an attractive destination for students anyway. Some of the attraction tends on the fact that the educational quality in Canada is of top notch, compared to the rest of the world, and it's affordable. You can, it's affordability is relative, but generally speaking, when you compare Canada across board with other advanced countries, you find that it's actually cheaper to study in Canada comparatively when you look at it, when you break down the tuition fees, and this is something that makes a lot of students gravitate towards Canada as a study destination. Canada has so many iconic features that also attract people, So some of the places that students always want to go is like the likes of Vancouver. You can see a picture of Vancouver embedded here. It's a very beautiful place. It's one of the warmest places in Canada to be. So it's a sought after destination for study. Another very popular city is Calgary. You can see from the picture here that the beautiful city of Calgary also hosts quite a number of universities as well. And it's always welcoming for students and different nationals around the world. Toronto is a very popular province. Basically, everybody wants to be in Toronto. It's like saying you want to go to London, basically, and it offers a lot. It's a very multicultural city, and it hosts a number of universities, high-ranked universities as well. Just a bit of digression. I mean, can anyone name some of these popular Canadians? You can just drop your answer in the chat box if you recognize any one of them. The four Canadians in the picture. Just drop your answers in the chat box. So if you still remember any one of them, basically, these are popular Canadians that we may all have come across, especially if we are, moviegoers. Yeah, somebody has just, recognized Justin Trudeau, Jim Carrey. Yeah, Celine Dion. Yeah, just one more to go. Yeah, so moving on. You can see that the Canadian education system is a bit broad. It has in it a lot of features, vocational study, interwoven with technical training, masters, colleges, of course, starting at the elementary level, basically. So whichever level of study that you want to go in for, there's always room for everyone, starting from foundation to undergraduate, vocational study, technical training, bachelor's degree, and up to PhD. Well, I must stress the fact that I know a number of our audience might well be looking at postgraduate study options. At the moment, we only have a very few postgraduate options. That's why we've listed them here. The schools that we work with that have postgraduate courses on offering. So you can see some of the courses here, basically, because at the end of this session, I know a lot of us might have questions to ask about different schools across Canada, but the field that we work with that offers postgraduate masters is the one I've listed here. For undergraduate courses and programs, we have endless options for that as well. I mean, if you're interested in undergraduate studies foundation, just contact us. We'll definitely be able to find something for you. But for postgraduate, we are limited for now, even though we're trying to, engage more schools. But the few schools that we have for now are the ones that are displaying the courses, basically. So that we manage your expectation as regards that, because I know majority of our audience might be looking at master's option, but the few we have is what I've displayed, so you can just note that as well. But for undergraduate, we have endless options, so you can always contact us for whatever courses you want to do at the undergraduate level. So you can see some of the partner universities that we work with here. We've put the icons there, just for you to know that, these are the partners that we, at the moment, work with, and as time goes by, we have more partners. We'll definitely communicate that across. I must mention, the pandemic and how Canada is reacting to it. At the moment, if you secure a study visa to study in Canada, you're definitely allowed to come into Canada. But then there's a recent announcement, as we know that these things are changing, the way different governments are responding to it changes, that when you come into Canada, you should have done, a COVID test. And I think at the point that you come in, you might also be subjected to further testing too as well. But if anything changes, definitely we will inform you. So we all know that one of the areas that seems very tricky for students that want to study in Canada, especially from Africa and Nigeria, is the visa section. So we know that that area is one of the reasons why some of us haven't joined us. And I think that the level of preparation that we put into applying for visa is what actually determines how well our chances, how well we stand a chance of getting that visa. Some of the things that we need to ensure that we do, especially that the fact that it's a bit tricky, it's that we need to ensure that we have our acceptance. We need to have that personal statement, which a lot of people don't pay attention to. I mean, your level of study needs to be aligned with your previous academic background, and should all fit in. So those are the kind of things that the embassy is looking for, and those are some of the things that we also help with. We do not guarantee anybody that they will get visa when they go through us, but we help ensure that your application meets the basic requirements, and that's one of the things that we pride ourselves in. So just note that for going forward. Time is of the essence. It takes time to apply for visas, and we know that the turnaround time for visas may actually differ because of COVID right now. So if you're applying for a visa, if you're applying for admission, you need to make sure that you apply on time, so that you can secure your admission on time and also apply for visa on time. Accommodation options for students, basically. Accommodation is relative, depending on where you want to stay and how big your budget is. But whatever the options are, our counselors are always able to advise you based on the school you're going, the best form of accommodation that's possible or that is available for you. I would also encourage you to use our services, because it's completely free. Just like I mentioned at the beginning, if you want to apply to any of the schools that we showcased in this webinar, you can contact any of our counselors, and we have some designated Canadian counselors, which I'm actually displaying their numbers. Depending on which region of Nigeria you stay, you can copy down those numbers. For Lagos, Abuja, Victoria, and Ikeja, so you can contact our dedicated Canadian counselors that would be able to help you with your application and any other questions you may have after this webinar. So I want to thank you for tuning in. The next section is the interview of our guest. And Ikena, can you please come up with the questions, please, for our guest? Ikeda, are you there?
All right, thank you, Mr. Yomi.
Okay.
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah.
Hello?
Yeah, I can hear
Oh,
you.
okay, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Yomi, for that very brief, straight to the point presentation. So, like I mentioned earlier, we have the Trade Commissioner for the High Commission of Canada in Abuja, Mr. Okonkwo, and we do have some questions for him. So this will be like a brief interview. And then I would start by asking him a couple of questions which we've noticed are of interest to a lot of students seeking to study outside of Nigeria. And so after that, my colleague Deborah would pick questions from the chat box. So, like Mr. Yomi said earlier, before he commenced his presentation, please, any questions you have, especially relating to visa requirements, studying in Canada, and schools and all that, you can drop them in the chat box and we will take them one after the other. If you want any question to be answered by the Trade Commissioner, please make sure that you indicate that you're directing that question to the Trade Commissioner so that we know that that question is for him directly. And if you want Mr. Yomi to answer a particular question, you can also indicate. Otherwise, our counselors are also in the chat room, making sure that any of your questions are being answered and taken care of. So, Mr. Okonkwo, good afternoon, sir.
Hi, Kenna. Good afternoon.
Yes, sir. Thank you for joining us once again. We do have a couple of questions for you. Um, so the first question is, can students travel for resumption of studies this fall? You know, because of the whole COVID situation and all that, a lot of students are concerned that would they be able to travel if they get their admissions and visas?
Ikenna, first of all, I should do two things. First of all, I really like to thank UKES for inviting me. It's really nice to be here. Yomi and I have been working together for quite a while, so I should just mention that I've known him for a few years, and I'm really happy that I could join here. And then second of all, my internet connection has been horrible all day. So if I need to turn off my video at some point, I'll just turn it off to improve the throughput. I hope you can hear me. Just let me know if you can't hear my sound at any point. So yes, the question is, can people travel? And yes, they can travel. However, there are big buts, not just to talk about between now and, I'm talking about, currently, trying to predict what will happen in the fall. I wouldn't even try because, COVID is changing almost on a daily basis. But if anybody in the audience gets admission now and gets a study permit approval, he'll be given a letter, he or she will be given a letter of introduction, which they can take to the port of entry. And it means that they are exempt from loads of travel restrictions that are ongoing in Canada. Currently, I mean, just yesterday or the day before, there were additional restrictions that were introduced. So it's something that is incredibly fluid. It's something that is changing almost on a daily basis. My strongest advice for your audience is that before you get on any plane, before you make your travel plans, just check what's going on. Go on the IRCC website, on the CBSA website, and then check what the latest details are because they are changing almost on a daily basis. Just yesterday, I think it was, the government of Canada introduced an additional requirement that when you land, you have to stay in a government-approved hotel for 3 days before you take a COVID test. That may not apply to students. I'm not 100% sure. It may apply to students, but I think it's just something that everybody has to take the responsibility for finding out before they get on a plane. A couple of weeks ago, a father called me and said, "Oh, my wife and my son are stuck in Istanbul. They were flying, and they were, even though they got to Istanbul from Lagos, they were told that they could not get on a plane to go to Toronto. So it's really important that you clear that up before you get on a plane. So that's the current situation. Talk less about how predicting what will happen in the fall. My suspicion or my hope is that between now and September, the government of Canada has made a lot of progress in vaccinations, and some of these travel restrictions can be lifted. But I think I'll just leave it at that for now, Ikenna. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. I think the most important thing is safety for everybody. So, yes, students should consider all those restrictions before traveling. There's no point, getting on a plane if you might not arrive at your destination. Okay.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much for answering that, sir. Okay, so the second question we have is that it's been announced that the High Commission has introduced a new scheme that will ensure a quick turnaround for study visas in Nigeria. So how soon will this be implemented? Is it already in effect? That is, if it's not already in effect, how soon will it be implemented?
Okay, so it's called the Nigeria Student Express. And that was, first of all, I should say very quickly that I don't work for IRCC. I'm not an immigration officer. So everything I say here, please take it with a pinch of salt. Still do your own research. I've attended dozens of sessions with them, so I kind of know what's going on, and I try to keep informed because we have loads of questions when we speak to students. But just be aware that there's the Nigerian Student Express that was announced last January, so just over a year now. Because of COVID, I think it was suspended at the time that there were loads of restrictions, as we already mentioned. There are two important things with the Nigerian Students Express, and my suspicion is that over the next few months there will be an official announcement from Canadian Immigration, and I look forward to sharing the details with UKES, and I'm sure you'll see it all over the press. But there are two things that are important, and I think people should take note of. One is an IELTS result. So one of the requirements to be expedited in the Nigerian Student Express is producing an IELTS result. I know we Nigerians, we don't really like to write IELTS because, we studied in English, so it's not something that we like to do. But just for this scheme, one of the requirements is an IELTS result. If you don't want to write an IELTS result, you may not be eligible to be expedited. And the promise at the time was that those people who are eligible and who are processed to the Student Express, the turnaround time will be 2 weeks, which I was very excited about. We've seen delays that have gone to 3 months, 4 months, but they were promising 2 weeks. So I still hope that they introduce it and they make the announcement soon. The second thing, apart from the IELTS result, is something called My Bank Certificate. So that's incredibly important. Whether you're submitting IELTS or not, and I'll type the link in the chat as soon as possible so that people can go and familiarize themselves with that. In the past, you will submit, dozens of pages for your bank statement. Now you just go to this My Bank Certificate. A lot of banks, Nigerian banks, are already on the platform, and it generates a code that IRCC can use to verify your financial statements. So that's very important. Even if you can't do IELTS, or for whatever reason you don't want to do IELTS, please ensure that you make inquiries about My Bank Certificate and you use that one instead of generating 40, 50 pages of bank statements, because at some point they will disregard those bank statements. So two important things there should be an announcement soon. Just to summarize, there should be an announcement soon on the Nigerian Student Express, IELTS, and My Bank Certificate.
Okay, thank you very much for that, sir. We have another question, very important question to most students. And the question is, how easy is it for a student to transition to an immigrant visa after studies?
Okay, so Canada is one of those countries. I think there's Australia, the UK has introduced a new scheme, but Canada has a fairly transparent pathway to move from being a student to being a permanent resident and possibly a citizen. So when you finish a program, there are some programs that are eligible. So without having to go into the details, I encourage people to go on the website and see if your school is eligible and if the program you want to do is eligible. after 1 year, you can get a postgraduate work permit. And then from there, you're also eligible to apply for permanent residence if your employer will sponsor you, or different measures, including one that has become very popular amongst Nigerians, which is the Canadian Express Entry. The Canadian Express Entry is an initiative to attract immigrants to Canada, and is a point-based system. And the fact that you've studied in Canada increases your points, and the fact that you've worked in Canada increases your points. So if you went to study in Canada, you finished a 1-year program, or several other years, and then you work for at least 1 year, you become eligible for the Canadian Express Entry. And the fact that you have, both your Canadian education and Canadian work experience, it increases your points in the Express Entry. So there are several ways to go from point A as a student to point B as a permanent resident. And people can, study them and see how, where they would fit in and which ones they're eligible for. But yes, there is a transparent pathway to move from being a student to being a permanent resident in Canada. Kenna.
Okay, thank you very, very much. I think a lot of students should also make some research into those express entry platforms or pathways, so that they get more information about that. It's really, really important.
Yeah.
So we have a fourth question.
Just one quick point.
then-
I mean, I joined the High Commission in 2015. Between 2016 and now, the number of Nigerians that have moved to Canada as permanent residents has gone up by 200%, something like that. I think last year there were 12,000 Nigerians that got permanent residence visas, a 200% increase. So it's a massively popular initiative. If that is the person's interest, if you just want to go and study in Canada and come back and work in Nigeria, fantastic. We love you. In fact, the government of Canada has paid for an alumni association. The government of Canada has paid to set up an alumni association. So people who just want to go and study and come back, fantastic as well.
Oh, okay. Thank you for that, sir. So the fourth question is, what are the pitfalls students should be aware of when applying for a study visa?
Okay, so this is a tricky one, and this is another one that I have to remind people that I don't work for Canadian immigration. So this is based on my opinion and based on listening to people talk about it. I think the most important one, and it's really important, so it's my number one, is please do not submit any false documents. I hope you can hear me, Ikenna. There's some background
Yes,
noise.
we can, sir.
Can you hear me? Okay. So please do not submit any
you
false documents. It's just, it just makes things difficult for everyone. They have to investigate, blah, blah, blah. It spoils the chances of future Nigerians who are trying to study in Canada. And if they find you out, you get banned. And not only do you get banned, but the Canadian government works in close proximity with, the UK, the US, EU, and your details will be shared with those countries. So I just think, the risks are too high. Unfortunately, there are so many fraudulent documents that people just feel confident doing. And sometimes, to be incredibly honest, I know I'm saying this here, but sometimes it's the agents, that do that. So my second tip would be, it is your responsibility. It is your application. So even if you're working with an agent, and I must stress, I know very professional agents. I've dealt with very professional agents, but I've also dealt with very mediocre agents. So it's your responsibility, regardless of the agency you're using, if you're using an agent, to make sure that the documents he submits are representative of you. They will not ban the agent, they will ban you. So number one tip, do not submit any false documents. Two, the application is your responsibility. Just look through it and make sure that it is yours if you're working with an agent. The third one I would say is, it has to make sense. You know what I mean? I know Yomi talked about that in his presentation. And it's nice if you're 45 and you want to, go to school in Canada and, you've worked for 20 years. Now you want to go and do a 1-year degree in hospital management or something. You know, as interesting as that is, just look through your application and make it make sense, if that's the right way to put it. And one of the ways to make it make sense is your personal statement. It's called the statement of purpose. To be incredibly honest, some people just leave that to the agency, or some people just, you know, ask a friend, you know, what did you submit last year? And they essentially copy and paste. You know, these immigration officers, they've read a lot of these statements of purpose. So sometimes they just read the first paragraph and they know that they've seen it somewhere before. And they're not just encouraged to read more. So please make it make sense. You know, the statements of purpose must reflect why you want to study this program, why now, and why Canada. Why you want to study this program, why now, why Canada. So, you know, whatever you need to explain it in the statement of purpose and make it make sense. I'm just being careful here because I don't work for IRCC, but I hope that those tips will help someone. Ikenna.
All right. Thank you very, very much for that answer. The fifth question is, okay,
We've
I
already
think
done
you've already
5.
talked
Incredible.
about this. Can you hear me, sir?
Yes, sir.
Yes, I can hear. Can you hear me? I can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, yes, I can hear you, sir. All right, I think you already spoke about this question when you talked about the Nigerian Student Express visa, which is the 2 weeks turnaround. But aside from that express visa, what's the normal turnaround rate for study visas for Canada?
Oh my God, Ikenna, I've heard of people who got approved in 3 weeks or rejected in 3 weeks. I've heard of 2 weeks. I've heard of 4 months. I've heard of 6 months. Honestly, I would have just said go on the IRCC website and there was there's a link there that can tell you what the average turnaround is currently. However, since COVID came, there's even a disclaimer on the IRCC website that, you know, they cannot guarantee, the turnaround time now. So unfortunately, there's no answer to that question. If and when they reintroduce the Nigerian Express, the Nigerian Student Express, the promise is 2 weeks. So if you submit all your documentation on time, and this is an important point as well, you know, they're never going to call you and say, hey, you didn't submit this or you're lacking on that. So it's your responsibility to submit all your documentation on time. And then hopefully, you know, you could get approved if you're eligible for the Nigerian Student Express within those 2 weeks turnaround time. But don't also forget that there are other things to consider when you submit your passport, when it comes back to you, how efficient VFS is. You know, VFS is the consultant that helps transmit passports and document and collects biometrics on behalf of the government of Canada. So there are other things to consider. For a student, you also have to do a medical test. You know, that's another thing to consider. So it just takes a bit of planning, and I encourage everybody in the audience to, you know, start to think ahead. I want to study in the fall. What do I need? If I'm going to arrive in Canada in September, what do I need now? And start planning ahead of it. Don't do Nigerian time for in this case. So unfortunately, I don't know the answer to that question. You know, it varies depending on each file.
Okay, thank you very much. One thing I want to highlight from what you just talked about is applying on time. It's a problem with Nigerian students. We tend to wait until the very last second to submit all the documents, to put in the applications, and then, you know, things get slow and you start to get worried. So please, to the students and to the families on the webinar today, please, we appeal to you to start your application process as soon as this webinar ends. Okay, you can never be too early, you know, to apply for your studies because, you know, yes, you can never be too early. So you're going to be working with Canadian time, and Canadians are on time every time. So you cannot, use the Nigerian time factor for that. All right. So one final question from me before my colleague Maureen takes over. I'm sure a lot of students are concerned about this as well. So can students work while studying? And if yes, is there any hour limit to the work permission for students?
Yeah. So yes, the answer is yes. So students are typically, if there was no COVID, you can work 20 hours, 5 hours a day when school is in session. When school is out of session, I think it's unlimited as long as your employer is willing to hire you. Since COVID came, obviously things have changed. Many communities are on lockdown. If you are not working in an essential service like